Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Walker. I am I would consider an early stage crypto investor. My partner, Brock, and I began mining Bitcoin back in 2012. Got involved in a number of different projects. One of our favorite investments, of course, was Everipedia. We were original investors in the project, met this great team, and during that process, I learned a lot about where the vision came from and how it all began. And I've got an amazing guest today. Larry Sanger, the co-founder of Wikipedia, is here. And we'll get a chance to do some Q&A. The main point of today's presentation is bringing blockchain to the masses, and naturally, as the co-founder and of arguably one of the 3 or 4 most important websites in the history of the world. I think Larry has a really interesting perspective, and I'm really excited to get a chance to spend some time up here with him. So without further ado, you've learned my story. I think we'd all love to learn. Larry, tell us your background, and how did you dream up Wikipedia, and where did that come from?
Right. So good morning, all. Thanks for coming out so early. I wanted to be a philosophy professor and write a system of philosophy. And I discovered there wasn't a lot of money, and I wasn't into that, and I was casting around for different things to do, and I eventually hit upon starting websites. So the first website that I made any money from was Sanger's Review of Y2K News Reports back in 1998. And then, an acquaintance of mine, Jimmy Wales, was sort of following that, and after that wound down, because Y2K ended up being a dud, he basically offered me a job. Why don't you get this project started? I've come up with a domain name for it, but I haven't really thought much else, and it's called Nupedia. And initially, we wanted to have a more traditionally edited encyclopedia with a very difficult, arduous editorial process. But it ended up producing just a few dozen articles in the space of several months. And we told each other, this is just way too slow. We need a new way to get a stream of content. So to make a much longer story short, I was having a Mexican dinner with a friend of mine down in Pacific Beach, and he said that he'd been working on wikis, which had software that had been around for 5 years. Wikipedia didn't come up with it. The more he described it, the more I thought that this was the kind of software that would solve Nupedia's problems. And so we launched it. I wrote a lot of the original policy and help documents, and the 2,000 or so people that I recruited for Nupedia got pretty excited about Wikipedia, at least a lot of them did. So it had a ready-made community already motivated to contribute, and it just took off. I mean, within about 3 or 4 months, we could plot the growth curve, and it looked exponential, and it continued to be for the rest of the year. Then by the end of the first year of Wikipedia, basically the dot-com boom turned to bust.
Yeah, the bubble pop.
The dot bomb. That's a good way to put it.
It was.
So they lost the ability to pay me, and it wasn't a big household name yet, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then a year after that, I won't go into this in detail, but I cut ties basically with Wikipedia and Jimmy Wales because they were taking the community in a sort of what I regarded as a more or less irresponsible editorial direction, and I've had issues with it ever since.
Yeah, I've read some of the, I've read some of the back and forth, and sometimes those, divorces happen.
But I named it. I came up with I organized the community. I came up with the policy. I monitored the wiki on a daily basis and basically got the ball rolling.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, and then since then I've worked on all kinds of educational and reference projects. Maybe the one I'm most proud of is called Reading Bear. So readingbear.org. I'm no longer managing it, but that's what I used to teach my kids to read when they were 1.
Oh, that's
So,
really
yeah.
interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, so what I was hoping to do today is, with your experience of creating a new, basically the world's first online encyclopedia that really became meaningful. We all recognize there's amazing upside. It's created. I don't even know the number of viewers and the number of contributors. But obviously, we all know that there's downside, and there's all kinds of problems with the way Wikipedia manages and and handles content curation. So now you've created a new I would call it version 2.0 Wikipedia on top of a blockchain called Everipedia, and I wondered if you could share with us how you feel that tokenization and blockchain can improve on the original vision.
Right. Well, it was actually I didn't actually get Everipedia started. I'm not a co-founder, but I started talking to the co-founders just a few months after they got the project started. And I was impressed with the sort of traction that they got in the first couple of years, and they kept trying to get me on board, and I was trying to get them to work on a project I was calling Greater Wiki, which I'm not going to go into in detail, but generally the idea is there needs to be a catalog of all the encyclopedia articles in the world. And there needs to be a way to rate all of those articles. Ultimately, it will be possible to create an online marketplace of knowledge where we are motivated and incentivized to basically write the very best article on every topic. And Wikipedia doesn't support that. Blockchain does. Blockchain actually operationalizes the idea of decentralization, which is absolutely necessary to that greater wiki idea. The problem with Wikipedia at root, as I see it, the reason that they have only 10,000 regular contributors, even though millions of people have signed up for accounts, is that it has a very idiosyncratic community, and that's to be expected. What we need to do if we want to actually pool everyone's labor in the world, you can't make them all subject to the same editorial policies, because that many people cannot possibly agree on the same policies. And they won't all fit in with the same community culture. So what needs to exist? A neutral protocol. So Sam Kazemian, the president of Everipedia, he called me about a year ago and said, we're thinking of moving Everipedia, which is a fork of Wikipedia, to the blockchain, and this is going to make it possible for us to execute your Greater Wiki idea. Are you interested? And by the way, we're going to be able to raise a whole bunch of money because, especially if you come on board, and then, this is it's a big deal. And I was convinced, and we did. We raised $30 million from, well, among others, DNA.
Right.
So.
I can tell you as an early investor, learning that it was possible that you were going to become part of the project definitely is a positive thing, and we're excited that we're able to make that work. You mentioned as you were discussing it, you mentioned decentralization.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could expand a little bit about how blockchains can help and actually, the importance of decentralization for something like this project.
Well, for one thing, if we are trying ultimately to create a collection, and I'm glossing over a little bit about phase one, which is what we're developing right now, by the way. In this case, we're just putting Everipedia.org on the blockchain. So that's Wikipedia plus the 1 million articles that we've written in addition. In the second phase, though, decentralization becomes absolutely important, crucial to having a really meaningful global partnership of a lot of different encyclopedia publishers and just individual writers. If you start a for-profit company and just invite people to submit articles to your private network, they won't be interested, of course. Why would they be? You're going to exert editorial control. And that also goes for just individual, like college professors and other experts in different things, because they care very, very, very much about things like editorial policy and who's going to make the decisions and so forth. That's all there is to deciding on their level of participation in a project like that. So the only way to get like Britannica and Wikipedia and Everipedia and all kinds of smaller reference publishers together with all the people who could be working on Wikipedia but aren't because they're put off by the community. To get all of those people to work together, you can't do it unless it's decentralized, unless there is no leader, right? If people have to trust in the judgment or the ideological correctness or whatever of the leadership, then most people will be excluded. They will exclude themselves.
Right. I think to that point, I wonder if we could discuss what I think what most people think is the high level, the main problems with Wikipedia appears to the outside viewer, just the casual viewer like myself. Mm-hmm. It feels like the main problems that they run into is fake news, of course, and things like political viewpoints being, I guess the equivalent of upvoted and things like that. How do you solve for that with an incentive opportunity that Everipedia has that Wikipedia simply doesn't?
Right. Well, as I was alluding to earlier, there are a couple of phases to our development. We're right in the thick of phase one, and there's basic incentives because we're built on EOS, and we launched like a month after the EOS mainnet launched. EOS is I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Well, we're still, what I'm hoping to kind of focus on right now is how will Everipedia be able to incentivize real news rather than, kind of fake or politically correct news that seems to dominate the Wikipedia articles.
Right. So basically, just as EOS requires staking in order to push to the network, well, we do as well. So if you want to make an edit, then you have to put up just a small number of tokens. And then if your edit is not accepted, then you don't get your tokens back, and you do if it is accepted. So that acts as a sort of baseline quality mechanism. And in addition, we have mechanisms that are under development to basically reward people based on how valuable they think your contribution is. So if the facts seem a little shaky to the community, so this is a way to actually take part of the magic that actually makes Wikipedia work and put some financial incentives and maybe more importantly, ownership of the participants into the system. So making it a little bit more real.
Right.
And then in phase 2, if we do indeed have this sort of greater wiki system that invites competing articles on the same topics, then in order to get to the top of the competition to be the first listed article with the highest rating, your article is going to have to be pretty good.
Right.
And if all the available articles, be they from Britannica or Wikipedia or from some more specialized source, aren't very good, it'll be really easy in our system for like a college professor who's a real expert to write a new article that is just clearly much better and just leapfrog over the rest and not have to go through the whole process of getting shared everywhere and SEO and finally making it to the top of the Google, which never happens, right?
Right.
There's no way for individuals to go head to head with the behemoth that is Wikipedia or Britannica or any of the other sources. But this will actually allow people to engage in a competition that is open to people who want to work outside of any such community.
So I think that was really the area that got us the most interested, was recognizing with how important, and we didn't really know at the time, but fake news and paid paid shilling and paid articles and sponsored ideas that seem to dominate news at this point. When there's a real community incentive mechanism in place to deliver the best quality, content, and those will become the winners. That felt to me like that was what really got us excited about the project.
Yeah, and just one other very quick point on this. People obviously differ on what is fake news and what isn't. And the nice thing about this project is that if we allow people to volunteer information about their political and religious and national backgrounds and things like that and their areas of expertise, that allows us to say what is the best, most accurate take on a subject according to a particular group, which is actually much more interesting than just somebody claiming the mantle of authority for everyone.
I love that. Yeah, that's really I think that's part of some of the really interesting parts of blockchain. And one real question that I was interested in your opinion on. You were, very, very prevalent in the open source and open content culture, creating, something that.
Not really open source, open content.
Well, let's call it open content. Yeah, let's call it open content. And I wonder if you could compare and contrast how blockchain kind of works in that same manner, or how it differs to the let's call it the open content culture.
So one of the best discussions of this, which I want to encourage crypto people to go out and read, is an essay by Eric Raymond called "The Cathedral and the Bazaar." It's a free essay. It's called "The Cathedral and the Bazaar." Not bizarre, bazaar.
Yes.
And by Eric Raymond. And it basically clarifies that what goes on when people work on what are now GitHub projects, OSS, open source software, Apache, Linux, and other projects like that, it's a sharing culture. And it's robustly decentralized in the sense that nobody's giving out orders about who is going to be working on what when. It's like you can work on it however much you want, and we will, it is kind of still censored because there's a gatekeeper who decides what code is in and what is out. But what blockchain does is to decentralize it even further so that there aren't any gatekeepers beyond whatever is required by the smart contracts to like get information on the network. So like Steam might have a gray list, for example, and the Everpedia network will no doubt have to have something similar. And of course, we're going to have the staking mechanism, which actually is going to serve a similar sort of purpose. But I actually think the barrier to entry into the blockchain, if it's going to be truly decentralized, has to be low. It has to be a very low hurdle. We just want to get rid of the real garbage and the really obvious trolling and stuff like that that virtually no one can support. But anyway, if we're going to have questions, we should.
Yeah. We were going to do a quick Q&A. We have a couple minutes left. I've had the wonderful opportunity to spend a good 20 minutes asking questions of the of really the creation and how arguably one of the most important websites in history was built. I wonder if the audience would like to take a minute or two, and if we have any questions for Larry, who can give some great comments and thoughts on how that was created. I can't really see if there's anybody that has questions. We have a couple minutes left.
Here's a gentleman.
Hey, hi.
Do we have one over here?
The mic is on.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Hey, this is fantastic. I wonder if you've thought about kind of bad actors with infinite resources for whom there's no too high a cost for sort of changing or modifying the truth. I mean, in a weird way, the Facebook ad attacks on our election are kind of a proxy for this. People willing to spend money for some other outcome, which is not financially driven, but politically or nation state driven. As you think about this, information is subject to civil attacks too, right? Like, what are the mechanisms to protect against entities that have the resources to attack and hack and even rewrite truth in a distributed environment?
Okay.
Didn't catch it.
It is a little hard to catch that, but
Very equi.
with the issues that we have with like Facebook ads, how do you feel that there's a way to prevent well-funded attackers? As an example, with the election and the prevalence of fake news that was pushed out there, how do you feel that with this new creation we can help to fight and stop well-funded people that actually want to create fake history?
Mm-hmm. Right. It's a good question, and I think that might be a much more difficult question if we were to just stay at phase one.
Right.
But if we keep the barrier to entry into the network low, as I was saying before, so that there is a very wide variety of perspectives on any given topic permitted in the system, then we just invite people, and here it would be one person, one vote, not one token, one vote, to rate the articles. And then the front ends like everpedia.org and other new apps that are built on the blockchain can use the data in in whatever way they like. So I can imagine HuffPo, for example, coming up with its own sort of curated encyclopedia based on the proper weighting of opinions from people, self-declared Democrats or progressives or whatever.
Sure.
And Fox News will have a different thing available, but the network will support both.
Right.
So I don't think that Wales will be able to simply rule out of court whole points of view altogether, because the interesting editorial decisions are not going to be made at the blockchain level. They'll be made at the level of metadata, which are merely stored on the blockchain, but don't determine what you can get out of the blockchain.
So unlike on Facebook, where if I have $1 million to pay for advertising, I can basically advertise anything that I want, creating a message, creating whatever my version is.
Yeah.
And Everpedia, really, you can't do that.
So the front ends for the Everpedia network, because again, this is a front end problem. It's not really a blockchain problem.
Right.
What I hope will exist, and what I am the strongest proponent of, is that there be really robust filters and the metadata to support the use of those filters that are part of the project. And then, responsible app developers will be able to set the filters in such a way that the wild-eyed propaganda basically can't see the light of day.
Right. That's fantastic. I don't know. Do we have any more questions? Oh, we do.
Next
Thank you.
question. Going into a similar direction, isn't staking, by and large, as a matter of principle behind it, basically buying the truth?
Is staking buying the truth by being able to stake?
Well, perhaps you misunderstand the function of staking. So all that happens when you propose an edit is, in order to do that, you have to put up a very small amount of IQ. That's our token. And then after 3 weeks, the community has been given a long time to decide whether to reject your edit altogether. And if they do, you don't get your tokens back. And if you don't, if they don't, then you do. And so it's a risk only for people who are just abusing the network.
So spammers definitely will be very likely to lose their stake. I do understand that the tokens are a penny or two, so I can imagine that it's not extremely expensive, and more or less anyone in the world that wants to stake will have the access to stake. Mm-hmm. Did that answer it?
Yeah, they kind of shifted it to a spam vulnerability, right? So if I'm rich enough and have enough identities that I can play with, then my stake is not going to deter me from just spamming the community.
Can you repeat that one more time? Last question. We ran out of time.
If I have enough identities, then I can just spam the community and by that still buy the truth.
If they have enough identities, they can spam the communities and buy the truth.
I don't really see how that would work, right? If at scale there's enough people working, of course anyone can organize large communities to upvote a particular article at the metadata level. Right, but in my vision of how it will work, there's going to be other categories that you'll be able to use to basically just tune those people out.
Got it. So I apologize. We ran a minute or two late. I think they're going to throw us off the stage any minute now.
All right.
But anyway, I'd love to give a big hand to Larry. I'm very excited to have been able to do this. Thank you, everybody.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Larry. That was